Now, I've played a lot of Football Manager this year. In fact, every single week for my own channel, I start a new save with a new team and I do 5 years with them. And often in these rebuild videos, we end up doing quite well, winning a lot of trophies. And I get a lot of people asking me in the comments, what is it you're doing to make your team win? What is your tactic? Blah, blah, blah. And always the answer is, well, the training I leave up to my assistant. The tactic is just a generic preset that the game provides. But the thing that makes a difference for me in terms of my team doing well, and the thing I'm going to talk about today, is building the perfect squad and having the perfect squad balance. Now, when I say this, I don't mean, buying the best players in the world, that makes the perfect squad. Obviously, we're not all able to do that. Instead, I mean the fundamentals of what makes a squad tick. We're going to cover all of it today using this Napoli save that I'm currently using for a rebuild video as an example. Now, I'm not saying this save in particular is perfect. In fact, we're still making our way towards having a perfect squad here. My rebuilds are usually 5 seasons long. This is us at the end of the 2nd season, I think, at this stage. So it's not going to be perfect yet. You can't make a perfect squad instantly, but if you follow all of the things I talk about today, you'll end up with a team that can compete on a regular basis. One disclaimer before we start though is here I'm talking about a generic team setup. I know if you're managing in certain divisions, there might be some different squad registration rules, or if you're managing in the 6th tier of England with an amateur side, you're maybe not going to be able to have as many players as I'm talking about here. But in general, for most saves, this is what you should do. And actually, most of these tips will still apply for all of the cases that I've just covered. If you do enjoy this video or get any use, make sure you smash that like button for us. Subscribe if you haven't already. And with that being said, let's get right into it. Now, there's a few different aspects of what makes up a good squad, but basically what we're looking for is to have our dynamics in a perfect state. I've always said I consider dynamics to be as good in-game as tactics and transfers. I think if you've got great dynamics, it can make a bad team good, and it really can elevate your side to another level. Now, I know there's a bit of irony in saying this is how you make the perfect squad and you need perfect dynamics, and then show a team that's got pretty much every player complaining right now, but a lot of these are for reasons not related to the video. Most of this is players wanting new deals, and a lot of the reason that I haven't given these players a new deal is because a lot of them I'm looking to move on, or some of them, I'm looking at Kvaratskhelia, want a little bit too much money, but that isn't related to building a perfect squad. What we're looking for here is something that's going to give us a lot of balance so we don't get messages like this, a player wanting to start more games. This is something that can cause a lot of trouble in your squad if someone isn't starting, if too many players are expecting game time. It can cause issues that then lead to other players jumping on the bandwagon with that player, and then suddenly your squad harmony falls apart, you lose a few games, and you're up for the sack. So here's the first thing that I think you should all be doing when building a perfect squad. It's very simple, it's the most obvious thing, but do not have a squad that is too big. I think the perfect squad size is 25 for a team in a top 5 European league, if we use that as an example. If we highlight how many I've got here, we have got 24, so we're about there, and there's a certain distribution that I would say you should have. Firstly, you want your best team, your first 11. That's 11 players. I then think you want a rotation option for every single position, whether that's right back, left back, centre back. Obviously you'd need 2 in that case. Goalkeeper, you want to make sure you have got a second in every single position. That makes 22 players. Then you've got a few spaces left. You can have 25 players, you can have 26, whatever you're after, that I think you should fill with a few things. Firstly, versatile players, people that can play across multiple positions, that are happy to be squad players. They're going to be very handy to have in your team, but mainly those extra squad spots should be reserved for some young talents that you're looking to bring through, as well as likely a third choice goalkeeper if that's something you want to have in your squad. The reason that I suggest your team should have that kind of balance is it will mean everybody is getting the right amount of game time. If you have 30 plus players, imagine how it was with Chelsea the other season when Lampard came in as caretaker manager. He spoke about players having to get changed outside of the dressing room. There was that many players, it causes squad disharmony. You want to make sure you've got the right amount of players in your team that isn't going to leave you lacking on the field, but isn't going to give you too many players that aren't getting minutes and therefore aren't going to get disgruntled. But of course, if you had 25 players and all of them were told they were going to be a star player, that's going to cause issues, and that's what I want to talk about now. It's all about playing time and making sure you've got the right agreed playing time set for your team. I know it's easy sometimes to offer a new signing star player or important important player because it means that they're more willing to join, but it can actually cause you a lot of problems in the long run. In fact, you want a nice balance when it comes to playing time in your squad. You don't want everyone thinking they're an important player. You don't want everyone thinking they're a star player, or a regular starter in fact. I mean, if we highlight all of the guys here, that's 15 people that think they should be starting most games, and some of them expect to start every game. Now that's okay, that's not too crazy, but if we had, say, 19 people all expecting to be regular starter or higher, that's going to cause issues. Someone isn't going to get the minutes, and therefore you're going to get some players that are disgruntled, and whilst it is pretty hard to avoid that on every single occasion, there are things you can do to make sure you have got a nicely balanced squad. First of all, it's the eye test. Look at it. We're okay right now, but if we had too many important players, there's going to be too many players expecting too many minutes that they're just not going to get. At the same time, you want your worst players to be expecting to be squad players. You don't want your bad players thinking they're going to play regularly. That's going to cause issue. Make sure they know their place in the team. If it's a squad player, make sure you set them as a squad player. Don't give them a contract as an important player just for the sake of keeping them, because it can actually cause a lot of problems. If you do want to lower someone's playing time though, there is something you can do. Let's take this guy for example. He's a regular starter. He's only 2.5 stars, probably has played a lot of games for us this season. Yes, he has. He started 13 matches and came off a bench 24 times. So I would say he's more of a squad player than a regular starter. And if we continue to give him this kind of game time, it might cause issue in the long run where he gets upset with the amount he's playing. He seems to be happy right now, but it could be a problem. So what you can do is go to the happiness section of this screen and you can actually change their playing time. As you can see, he's agreed playing time as a regular starter and he's actually been playing as a regular starter this season. But if you click this button that says change, you can then change the playing time of someone in your squad. Now, if we set him to emergency backup, he's going to be upset with that and you get this message at the bottom before you click change playing time. However, if you look for the ones that don't appear with this message, for example, fringe player, he'd be okay with, squad player, he'd be okay with, impact sub, he'd also be okay with. If you choose that, you're not likely to get a problem. In fact, I've never had a problem when setting a player a playing time that it doesn't outright say he's going to be upset with, like this. Now, some people have commented before saying that they've had an issue with it and they've set squad player when it said he'd be okay with it and it's caused an issue, but it's never happened to me personally. So every time in my save, I go ahead and I'll click change playing time. I usually do it at the midway point of the season and end point of the season, just so players know what to expect. Now he's happily going to be a squad player. That's going to lower his agreed playing time, and now he's going to expect less minutes. And if he does eventually start playing less, he's less likely to kick up a fuss because he knows deep down that he is probably only good enough to be a squad player. This isn't going to work with everyone, but it certainly can help your team. If we go Leo Ostergaard here, he's an important player that only played 6 times this season. That's the reason that he wants to leave at the minute. He was the one that wanted more playing time when we looked earlier. If we go to happiness, we can go down, set him to squad player, he would have been fine with that. Even fringe player, he's fine with. If we set him to fringe player, no issue caused. He's now going to expect way less playing time next season, which will hopefully ease him away from being upset. And in fact, if you've got a player that hasn't necessarily asked to leave yet and is just concerned about game time, and you do switch their agreed playing time, they can completely disappear from the issue screen. And as you can see, we've been given a boost in our club atmosphere purely because he's no longer upset. Just with that button click, we were able to fix a lot of things. So firstly, you want a squad that's balanced in terms of the numbers, but also balanced in terms of what they're expecting in terms of game time. Before we continue with the tips on how to build this perfect squad though, if you do want to check out this Napoli rebuild, it will be on my channel, which you can find linked in the description down below. As mentioned earlier, we do a new rebuild every single week, so if you want to check it out, then make sure you hop on down to the channel. I'd really appreciate any support from anyone that comes over. So we've covered squad size and also the playing times of your players in your team, and hopefully they're things you're going to follow going forward. If you didn't follow them, I still think you could have success in your save. You're just more likely to encounter problems in the long run, which might hurt you somewhere down the line. The next part isn't necessarily something that's going to affect how your team performs on the pitch, but in terms of how it grows over the next few years, this is something you want to make sure you're doing. And one of the most important things in the world of football is having some experience in your side. We've seen it with Chelsea in real life this season. They're a great example of how not to build a squad currently. So you've got these young players at Chelsea who are trying to be a Champions League club, but those players might not be quite there yet. Often you've got the big experienced players, your Drogbas, your Lampards, your Terrys of recent years, to start bringing in the young players around, and Chelsea don't quite have that. The experience matrix in Football Manager shows you exactly this. It shows you your players that are considered developing talents, your emerging talents, your peak talents, and your experienced talents. Now you want to make sure you've got a a mixture of all four. Emerging talents are people that are getting close to their prime, whereas peak are the players that should be in the prime of their career. You want most of your squad to be in that section. Now, if you have some younger players, they're going to be in this development tab. We've got Can Uzan in here, for example, a German 19-year-old who actually looks very good but isn't quite ready yet, so he's considered a developing talent, and experienced are the older heads at your club, Mario Rui. Now, I know it's easy to look at your team and just want wonder kids everywhere, but you want to make sure you've got a balance, because people like Mario Rui are invaluable. Firstly, for leadership expertise. He isn't quite a leader, but often the older heads at your club are going to be the leaders, and if you have a really good club captain that's been around for a while, a respected player, he's going to help you in sorting out any disharmony in your squad. Say, for example, the player we looked at earlier, Uzan, was annoyed at something, maybe wanted a new contract. Often, you can send one of your experienced players to talk to him, and if they are respected, they can end up talking that player down, and then you don't have the issue in the first place. At the same time, older players are great for mentoring younger players in the training tab, and then going to mentoring. If they've got good personalities, these older players can be great for that. So make sure you try and have a balance. Like I say, it's not the end of the world, but it is something that's going to make a very strong squad. By doing that, you're going to have older players that are respected, which will help cut out many problems in your club. You're also going to have mentors to give these younger players better development, which will lead to them being better, and in turn help you win more matches on the pitch. So not only do you want to make sure you've got a decent sized squad with accurate representations of their playing time, but also a mixture of old and young players and players in their prime. You don't want everyone young, you don't want everyone old. If you want to build the perfect squad, you want a mixture of all of it. If you follow all of these things, there's a good chance you're going to build a good team that's harmonious, they're all enjoying playing with each other, your dynamics will be high, and even if you haven't got the world's best tactics or players, that's going to lead to some great results on the pitch. But there's a few extra screens if you want to analyze your squad in a bit further detail that might help you out. I don't think any of these are massively necessary for making your team function well, but they can help you, particularly when it comes to planning for the future and seeing where your team is weak. The first thing I want to cover is this best 11 tab in the squad planner. Go to report and then best 11. This will show you your best team at the top here in green, but also your best young prospect in every single position. This will allow you to see maybe where you've got some great young players coming through. I mean, it looks like we've got a great left wing, an attacking midfielder, right wing looks good, but maybe if you look at centre back, one of our best young centre backs, he doesn't really look very good at all. So that might tell me that we need to buy some younger centre backs for the academy, so we've got some better players coming through down the line to help us out when the time comes. So this is a great way to analyse what you've got coming through in the next few years. But the final tab I want to cover is this comparison tab, the same place you saw best 11. Scroll down a little bit, click comparison, and here you can see where your team is weak in certain areas. For example, if we go to this physical tab, let's untick goalkeepers, let's focus on defenders. We can see that our defenders are really good when it comes to the stamina side of the game, but actually when it comes to jumping reach, we've got below average jumping reach in our squad, which isn't the end of the world, but it does highlight to us that we might have quite a small team and it might be good to add some height. Now, just by looking at some of these things, you might not notice anything, but you might notice a big flaw in your team. And I have just found, according to this graph, our midfield is pretty poor when it comes to tackling. We've got some great players when it comes to their technique and their technical ability, but maybe we need a bit of extra bite in that midfield, and that's going to guide me now for when I buy my next player. I'm going to look for a midfielder that can tackle well, because clearly we are lacking that, and I can now check that in our team by going through some of our key midfielders. At the same time, we learned that our team was quite small, so maybe I want to look for a big, tall, tackling midfielder. That will give us a bit of extra balance in our squad that isn't immediately obvious when you're playing a game like FM. If you were watching a team in real life, you'd notice all of this straight away, that this team is really small or this team is really tall. But without looking at that report section, it's very hard to know in game, so that's a good way to get some idea about where your team is at in certain sections, which will hopefully guide where you go in the transfer market. So there you go, that's how to build a perfect squad in FM24. If you have enjoyed it, drop a like on the video. Hopefully you've learned something that you didn't already know. I've been Jake for FM Scout, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.